From the Peoples of Neokosmos by Maya of the Khiva Court. Chapter 1. Concerning my own kindred, the Elves. Preface. It is with both humility and trembling curiosity that I present this book to readers beyond my homeland. I am Maya of the House Quell, sworn to the Khiva Court which guides the meditations, records, and quiet contemplations of my people. Ours is the court of winter's gentleness, of still air and deep thought, of the subtle magics that guard memory and soften the world's harsher edges. My family, though counted among a lesser branch of the royal household, entrusted me with duties that I performed earnestly, but never with the confidence I wished I possessed. For most of my years I knew little beyond the cold gleam of the winter courts, the quiet drifting of mists along the border wards, and the faint song of the veil that shields our realms. My task was to weave illusions and soft glamours so that those who approached us with fear or unkind intent might find themselves gently turned aside, confused but unharmed. I would not have dared to step beyond our forests if not for the unexpected arrival of a human adventurer who wandered, quite by accident, to the very edges of our borders. Unlike the hunters and explorers who sometimes brush against the veil without ever knowing it, this one managed, through luck or some strange intuition, to perceive me despite my illusions. They spoke to me without suspicion, as if addressing a familiar presence rather than a stranger woven in mist, and they answered my hesitant questions with a patience that surprised me. I could never quite discern their purpose nor their origin, and they left as mysteriously as they came, yet the curiosity they awakened in me lingered long after their footsteps faded. With the cautious blessing of my elders in the Khiva Court, I set forth to learn what lay beyond the shelter of our boughs. My travels have been clumsy at times, illuminating at others, and always marked by wonder. Before I speak of the many peoples I met, it is only proper that I begin with my own. I must tell you of my people, the Elves. Our form and features. Elves resemble humans closely enough that I was once mistaken for a small child when visiting a market in the south. This caused me great embarrassment, though the merchant meant no harm. We are slighter of build and our ears taper to graceful points. Most of us stand shorter than our human counterparts, men rarely exceeding the height of tall humans, and women often standing no higher than a human youth. Our skin is fair, sometimes pale as winter sunlight, and freckles are common. My own are numerous enough that a poet once described them as a constellation blown across my cheeks, though I felt too shy to respond properly at the time. Hair among us ranges from bright copper to pale gold, though darker shades occur. Our eyes take on the hues of deep forest greens, sky blues, and ambers. Time touches us slowly. Our faces bear the marks of years only after many seasons have passed. Our nature. A mind without violence. Among the greatest misunderstandings concerning us is the belief that we refrain from violence by choice or moral decree. This is not so. The impulse never arises. Our minds simply do not shape the thought of harming another being who possesses speech, reason, and heart. Anger, hatred, wrath, these remain foreign to me. I have studied them carefully, for human histories speak of them often, and I have seen their marks in trembling hands and sorrow-filled voices. Yet I feel them no more than a stone feels the wind. To my people, the idea of striking another person is not forbidden, it is unimaginable. We do defend ourselves against beasts of the wild, for even harmony must bow to survival. But inflicting harm upon elves, humans, or any other people feels as unnatural as stepping into fire. Magic and the quiet resonance of the soul. The arts we practice are gentle ones. Illusion, misdirection, veils of soft silver mist. These are the spells most associated with the Khiva Court, but they are common among our kindred as well. Rare individuals, touched with greater clarity of perception, see fragile glimmers of possible futures. Roughly 1 in 10 elves possesses magical aptitude, yet even those without strong gifts are attuned to the ley lines that run beneath our lands. Humans often speak of magic as a force to be commanded, we experience it as a harmony to be joined. Our lack of inner violence, I believe, is the reason our magic carries little of the danger it brings to others. Without discord of spirit, there is no strain in guiding the currents of the world.
Our path through the ages. Our oldest traditions recall our awakening in the deep forests long before the rise of Atlantis. When the first human cities appeared, we watched with wonder and cautious curiosity, forming what later ages called the Elven Watch. We did not rule nor interfere. We simply observed, seeking to understand these swift-lived and richly feeling beings.
The cataclysm that drowned Atlantis shattered us. Many lives were lost, the ley lines, convulsed lands we cherished were sundered. In the centuries that followed, we wove the veil, a great enchantment of concealment that shields our realms from the eyes of those who might wander unknowingly into scars of ancient magic. Though we hid, humans continued to speak of us. Hearing those tales in distant taverns, sometimes kind, sometimes fanciful, was a balm to my heart. I had feared we were forgotten entirely.
Gentle corrections of common misbeliefs. Allow me with kindness to address several errors often repeated among human storytellers.
We are not immortal. Our lives are long, but they do end, usually with quiet acceptance rather than struggle. We do not steal children. The notion is horrifying to us. No elf would covet what belongs to another family. We are not universally wise. I have made many mistakes, particularly in matters of bargaining, which remain baffling to me. We do not disdain humans. Many of us are merely shy or fear unintentionally causing offense. If there is one truth I hope this chapter imparts, it is that elves seek harmony. The Peoples of Neokosmos. Personal notes of Maya of the Khiva court. On two who share a name. It is a small oddity of my life that two of the most important elves I have known share the same given name. One carries the veil upon his shoulders, the other walked straight through it and never looked back. On Thalanor Quelithir, Chief Fell Warden of Veletasia. I do not remember the first time I met Thalanor Quelithir. In my earliest memories he is simply already there, like winter light through high windows or the faint hum of the veil itself. Other elves speak of him with titles, Chief Fell Warden, Anchor of the Mists, but to me he has always been great-granduncle, patient teacher, and something so close to a grandfather that I forget, sometimes, that we are not bound by that word. When I was very young and my illusions were ragged little things, I once tried to cloak an entire reading hall in mist. I overspent my strength and fell asleep on the floor, surrounded by drifting half-fog that clung to the shelves in embarrassed patches. I woke to find Thalanor sitting cross-legged beside me, quietly mending the spell rather than dispersing it. It was not a failure, he told me when I apologized. You reached too far. Next time, we start with a single shelf. He left the mist in place for the rest of the day. Elders had to peer through it to read the titles. No one scolded me. I did not realize until much later that it was his will that made it so. On his age in the Vale. Among elves, life is not merely a matter of years but of will. Most of us grow quietly tired after 1,000 years or so. The world loses its sharpness, the music softens. We do not rage against it. We simply allow ourselves to fade. Thalanor did not. He was already a formidable mage when the veil was first woven, more than 2,000 years ago by human counting, and he was critical in its creation. No one knows how old he truly is now. Some say at least 2,500 years, others refuse to guess. When I once asked him, he only smiled and said, "Old enough to have made most of my mistakes twice." I have watched many elders slip gently into contentment and then into memory. Thalanor, by contrast, seems held to the world by a single, unbroken thread duty to the veil, and a stubborn, tender belief that our people still have some part to play in the ages to come. On his kindness to me. For all the power he commands, Thalanor's greatest strength is his kindness. He has presided over crises I can only glimpse in implication, fractures in the ley lines, storms at the borders of Veletasia, whispers of the lost courts, and yet he never spoke to me in anything but warmth. When I doubted my work, he did not argue. He simply set another chair beside his in the observatory and left a stack of scrolls there, as though a place had always been waiting for me. When I returned from my first short journey beyond the veil, ragged with fear and wonder, he did not demand a report. He brewed tea, listened, and only occasionally asked the smallest of questions that nevertheless shaped my thoughts for months afterward. Once, as we walked along the inner edge of the veil, he rested his hand on my shoulder and said, very softly, "Maya, the world beyond us is changing. I would see our people meet it with open eyes, not legends grown stale. Go, learn, come back, and tell us what you find." I do not know if he remembers saying that. I have carried it in my heart ever since. I will not say so in any formal dedication, but in truth, this book belongs to him as much as it does to me. On Thalanor Thal Briarstride, a hunter lost beyond the Vale. If Elder Thalanor is the Vale made steady, then Thalanor Briarstride is the forest taking a wrong turn and deciding the detour is an adventure. Abasiming, by our people's reckoning, Thal is still young. His magic is faint, hardly more than a flicker compared to the steady glow of most elves. He should have lived a quiet life as a hunter near the borders of Velatasia. Instead, the Vale misread him, gently pushing him out into the mortal world and then, in its inscrutable way, failing to draw him back. On how we met. I first encountered him in a roadside inn, of all places, where no elf should have been. I sensed the faint echo of our kind long before I saw him. I expected a prisoner or some poor soul bound by contract. Instead, I found an elf leaning over a human map, trading hunting stories with a group of travelers as though they were old friends. When I approached, uncertain, he looked at me in simple delight and said, "Oh, another one. I knew I'd meet one of us out here eventually." I, who had woven illusions around cautious humans for months, could think of nothing intelligent to say. I asked him if he was lost. "Of course I'm lost," he replied cheerfully, "but it's a very interesting place to be." On his infuriating optimism. Traveling with Thal is like walking beside a song that refuses to resolve. He greets strangers before I can decide if they are dangerous. He steps over thresholds without checking for wards. He trusts that paths will curve towards safety simply because they have not yet killed him. Once, in a border town heavy with Rusrestrian soldiers, I insisted we keep our heads down and move through silently. He nodded solemnly, agreed, and then somehow ended up helping a baker carry in sacks of flour while telling an exaggerated story about the time a forest tried to eat us. I was furious. I hissed at him later that we could have been discovered, captured, dissected into curiosities. He listened patiently, then said, "We were not. The baker gave us bread. And now, if anyone remembers us at all, we are a pair of tired travelers who helped with flour." I hate that his logic made a sort of sense. Thal is almost entirely without the magic that shapes my life, and yet the world seems to bend toward him in small, improbable kindnesses. When inns are full, a stranger remembers a spare bed. When roads are dangerous, he stumbles onto some forgotten path that skirts the worst of it. He calls this luck. I suspect it is a kind of grace the Vale left on him when it pushed him out. I tell myself he irritates me. He walks too loudly. He laughs too freely. He asks questions with no regard for the careful distance I try to maintain between myself and the human world. And yet, on nights when we share a campfire and he falls asleep mid-story, head tipped back, trusting the dark as though it has never harmed him, I find myself strangely glad for his company. It is reassuring, I tell myself, to walk the outside world with another elf. That is all. Our paths did not diverge by choice. After our shared travels in the Northlands, through frostbitten forests and half-buried ruins, we were parted by circumstance too tangled to untie in a single telling. I returned to my duties. He continued onward, ever following the next horizon. Yet even now, on clear nights when the stars burn sharp above the Vale, I find my thoughts wandering northward without permission. I catch myself searching the heavens as though I might glimpse him by starlight alone, somewhere beneath that same sky. I tell myself this is foolish sentiment, and still I remain certain, quietly, stubbornly, that he yet walks the world, and that one day, somehow, the forest will lead him home.
Chapter 2. The Atlanteans. It is a daunting task to write of a people whose greatness ended long before my own awakening, and whose civilization now sleeps beneath the waves. The Atlanteans lived and perished thousands of years before the present age, and their vast empire crumbled in the cataclysm that began the very calendar most humans now follow. Their memory lingers like a sharp wind felt but unseen, powerful though intangible. And yet their shadow stretches across all of Neokosmos. Their ruins rise from jungles and deserts.
Their machines hum faintly beneath stone, and their blood flows still through many living peoples. Before I speak of those descendants, or of the mixed races such as the Matan, I must first describe the Atlanteans themselves, as best as I understand them. What I record here comes from excavated histories, broken tablets, living myths, and, most surprisingly, my encounters with 2 Atlanteans. One was truly alive. The other was something else entirely, and I will not dwell on that being in this text. The first, however, Xanthi, has shaped my understanding immeasurably. The form of the Atlanteans. In every account, and in my own observations, Atlanteans tower over all other peoples. It is said they were shaped by magic woven into their blood from the earliest days of their empire, and this seems entirely plausible when one stands beneath them. Atlantean women stand commonly between 6.5 to 7.5 feet. Atlantean men rise still higher, 8 feet or more, tall enough that even human warriors look small in their presence. Their bodies are not merely tall but powerfully built, with long, elegant arms and slightly elongated necks, proportions that seem almost sculpted rather than grown. Their broad shoulders, muscular frames, and perfect posture lend them a luminous, commanding presence. Their faces are fair and striking, often with high cheekbones and strong lines. Their skin carries a healthy, sun-touched glow even when they live far from warmth. Their hair is nearly always golden, thick, and worn long. Their eyes gleam in hues rare among other peoples. Pale, icy blues, shimmering silvers, or even luminous golds. In all my travels, no race bears such vividly colored eyes. Many humans describe them as otherworldly, and I must confess that even I, trained in illusion and diplomacy, sometimes struggled not to stare. The mystery of their civilization. Modern scholars agree that Atlantis stood at the pinnacle of human achievement. Their empire dominated both the physical world and the mystical, blending sorcery and technology in ways few can replicate even now. They founded their first cities nearly 2,000 years before the fall. By 1200 BF, they ruled nearly every known realm. Yet for all their might, they remain a people cloaked in contradiction. They were conquerors, yet scholars. Masters of magic, yet slaves to ambition. A people of beauty, yet doomed by their own brilliance. Many stories paint them as tyrants, but Xanthi's quiet sorrow when describing her home told me a different truth. They were flawed, proud, fearful, kind, curious, human in every way, except in scale and legacy. Atlantis was not merely an empire, it was a dream of perfect knowledge. And, like many dreams, it consumed the dreamers. The legacy of Atlantis in Neokosmos. Though the empire is gone, its influence is alive everywhere. The Ruestrian Empire proudly claims noble houses with Atlantean blood. The ruins of Deutera Atlantis lie beneath modern Fresnia and the southern coasts. Atlantean vault machines still hum with mysterious energies. The ancient Elven project left deep marks on both our peoples. Even now, 2.5 millennia after the fall, wanderers scour the continent for artifacts, writings, and devices. Some seek knowledge, others seek power. Rumors now spread of a sword found near Ruestria, attributed to Demacheron himself, a discovery that has shaken scholars in every domain. But that chapter too is for later pages. My encounter with Xanthi. Of all my studies, none has shaped my understanding of Atlantis more than the living woman I met. Xanthi. She was discovered within a strange Atlantean device, something between a coffin and a cradle, preserved in a peaceful sleep for more than 1,000 years. When she awoke, the world she knew had vanished. Her family, her culture, her city, all lost beneath the waves. Her appearance. Xanthi is the tallest woman I have ever seen, standing a full head above even the tallest Ruestrian soldiers. Her features are elegant but foreign to the eye, with long limbs and a poise that seems innate. Her hair is a soft gold, her skin smooth and unmarred, and her eyes shine with a strange golden light. She moves like someone raised in comfort. She startles easily. She speaks in a soft, cautious voice, as though words might betray her. She is gentle and exceedingly polite, but sorrow rests heavily upon her, like winter snow clinging to a branch. What she taught me, Xanthi shared what she remembered of her world, though she often hesitated, uncertain whether her memories would bring pain. From her I learned. The Atlanteans were not invincible, nor cold, nor cruel by nature. They valued beauty, luxury, and knowledge above all things. Their empire was filled with laughter and art as much as with ambition. Even at their height, they feared the vastness of magic. Xanthi reminded me that great civilizations are still made of people, flawed, hopeful, and vulnerable. The shadow of Demacheron. Briefly noted. I will not recount in this chapter the full tale of King Demacheron, for his story belongs to another essay entirely. I will only say this. His works fractured the world. He sought to bind the ley lines. He became something no longer human, and his presence lingers like a cold wind in dreams. I met, once, a thing that bore the echo of his legacy. It is not my place to speak further of it. Closing thoughts. The Atlanteans were giants in every sense, physically, magically, culturally. Their imprint upon the world is so vast that even elves, who lived long before their rise, must acknowledge their significance. Their fall reshaped the ley lines. Their ruins still hum with silent power. Their blood remains in the veins of kings and wanderers alike. If elves are the memory of the world, then Atlanteans are its legend. Great, tragic, and forever echoing through the ages. Personal Notes of Maya of the Riva Court. On Xanthi of Atlantis. These notes are not for publication, though perhaps someday I shall revise them for inclusion in the appendices. For now, they are simply my thoughts, written in quiet moments when I wish to remember her clearly. On first meeting Xanthi. When I first saw her, I felt very small, not merely in height, though that was certainly true, but in presence. There was something about her posture, her bearing, that reminded me of a tall evergreen grown on a cliffside, bending reluctantly to the wind, yet undeniably strong. She looked at me as though I were a dream, or a memory half remembered. I was frightened I would offend her somehow. I always feel that way around new people, but with her the sensation was almost overwhelming. How could someone who had known a world of gold towers, crystal avenues, and living machines possibly have patience for a quiet elf hiding behind her own illusions? But she smiled. It was small and wavering, but it was real. I shall always be grateful for that. On her kindness. Xanthi tries very hard to appear composed. I can see the effort. It softens her movements, slows her voice, makes her gestures precise, but underneath she trembles like new snow on a branch. She misses her home, though she rarely admits it aloud. Once, while we were camped near a ruined outpost, she found a piece of polished coral worked in the shape of a stylized sun. She sat and held it for a long time, longer than she realized. Her shoulders were shaking. I wished to comfort her, but I could not find the words. Elven customs are of little use in such moments. We do not often comfort the grieving among us. Sorrow flows quietly, and is tended gently by time. But Xanthi's sorrow is not gentle. It is sharp, fresh, an old wound reopened each time she remembers the world she lost. So I sat beside her, and I said nothing. She thanked me for the silence. On her fear. Despite her size and strength, Xanthi is easily startled. Loud voices make her flinch. Sudden lights make her recoil. She is wary of strangers, especially those who speak confidently. I think confidence was common among her own people, and what she sees now feels like echoes of a life she cannot return to. She once admitted to me, very quietly, that she fears being alone more than she fears being harmed. It startled me. I had not realized how deeply loss changes humans. Among my people, solitude is often sought, treasured even. But to her, solitude is an abyss. I must remember this when speaking to humans. Perhaps loneliness is a more powerful force among them than I understood. On her knowledge. She knows so much, and yet she doubts herself constantly. She will speak of Atlantean customs, how they dressed for festivals, how they painted their walls with shimmering pigments, and then abruptly fall silent, as though ashamed of remembering them. She apologizes when she describes machinery she thinks no one else could possibly understand. But I am fascinated by everything she says. I sometimes ask too many questions, I cannot help it. Human scholars told me often that Atlantean artifacts are incomprehensible or dangerous. But Xanthi handles pieces with casual familiarity, explaining their use in ways that make them seem almost ordinary, domestic. It is strange to think that a civilization capable of ruling the world also made simple devices for warming blankets on cold nights. On her humanity. So many humans speak of the Atlanteans as though they were demigods, giants of a vanished golden age. But Xanthi laughs at silly stories. She burns her fingers on cooking pots. She complains of stones in her shoes. She becomes shy when complimented. She stumbles over roots twice as often as I do. Once, she attempted to lift a heavy crate in earnest demonstration of her strength. It slipped from her grasp and shattered upon the ground. She looked absolutely mortified. I assured her that such accidents are common, though I am not sure she believed me. The truth. 1. I must remember in my scholarship is that the Atlanteans were unmistakably human. Larger, stronger, more radiant perhaps, but human all the same. On friendship. I am still not certain that she considers me a friend. I hope she does, though I am never sure how humans define such things. Among elves, friendship is a gentle, enduring thing. It grows slowly, like moss on stone. But when Xanthi walks beside me, her steps slow to match mine. When I cannot reach a high shelf in an archive, she lifts the scroll without being asked. When I grow anxious in a crowded place, she places her large hand on my shoulder, lightly, so as not to frighten me, and guides me to calmer spaces. I have read that humans measure friendship by shared hardship. If so, then perhaps we are well on our way. On what she has taught me. Xanthi has shown me more than the lost customs of her people. She has shown me that sorrow and strength may share the same heart. That even those born to greatness can be vulnerable. That curiosity can survive even the fall of a world. That humans, no matter how different, are not foreign to compassion. She once called me a lantern in a deep place. I did not know how to respond. No one has ever spoken of me that way before. Final note. Someday I hope to write a full account of her life, of who she was before the cataclysm, and who she is becoming now. But I must understand her better first and earn her trust. A story, like a friendship, cannot be forced. For now I remain content to learn quietly beside her, as winter trees listen to the first stirrings of spring. Maya of the Hiva Court, Private Reflection. Chapter 3. The Matan. A corruption of the Atlantean word matani, meaning mixed. Among all the peoples of Neokosmos, none are so widespread, so varied, nor so quick to reshape the world around them, as the Matan, the great tapestry of humankind, woven from every race once bound beneath the banner of the Atlantean Empire. They are the children of movement, of mingling, of 1,000 journeys taken unwillingly or freely depending on the age. And though some kingdoms insist fiercely upon distinctions between themselves, to my eyes, and to the eyes of any elf, they are one people. I do not write this to diminish their identities, only to express what is true in the long vision of the elven mind. Even the proud Ruestrian noble, the steadfast Fresnian warrior, and the cunning Alnhaman merchant share a common root. Their lines diverged only recently, within a span scarcely longer than one of my own life cycles. That they do not see this only amuses me gently, and I hope kindly. Origins of the Matan. Under the Atlantean Empire, the world was not merely conquered, it was reshaped. Peoples from far continents were moved, resettled, relocated, and absorbed into the machine of empire. Sometimes this was done to quell rebellions, sometimes to cultivate labor in distant provinces, and often simply because the Atlantean governors believed efficient societies required controlled mixtures of culture. Over millennia, these movements blended countless lineages. By the final centuries of Atlantis, pure-born Atlanteans were elite aristocrats. Elves were distant allies or coerced subjects. And the vast majority of the population were Matan. The Matan lived in city underlevels, farmed the plains, served on ships, crafted tools, and raised families. Their origins became so interwoven that even the Atlanteans themselves eventually used the word Matani simply to mean the common people. After the cataclysm, when Atlantis vanished beneath the sea, it was not the few pure-born survivors who rebuilt the world. It was the Matan. The form of the Matan. In general appearance, the Matan stand between elves and Atlanteans in height. Most men and women range from 5 feet to 6.5 feet, with taller individuals often boasting a trace of Atlantean blood. Their features vary greatly, but certain patterns endure. Dark hair and brown or black eyes are the most common traits. Sun-warmed skin dominates the central plains and coasts. Fairer skin and pale hair often signal distant Atlantean ancestry. Strong builds and remarkable endurance are nearly universal. They are, in truth, quite beautiful in a sturdy, warm and practical way. Their hands bear marks of work, their faces carry expression in ways elves seldom show. Compared to elves, their emotional lives seem both more turbulent and more vivid. I confess I have often been startled by how quickly a Matan will laugh, or shout, or weep, reactions my people feel but seldom display outwardly. Their great strength, adaptability. If the Atlanteans shaped the world, the Matan are the ones who remade it. Their adaptability astonishes me. They learn with breathtaking speed, sometimes too quickly for my mind to follow. They can conquer oceans, rebuild cities, navigate deserts, rediscover old technologies, and understand foreign tongues with an ease that borders on magic. In only a few centuries after the fall, they restored maritime routes lost since the cataclysm. They rebuilt shattered kingdoms atop Deutera Atlantis. They founded Ruestria, Alnhammer, and Fresnia. They reopened ruins and repurposed Atlantean devices. To elves, whose changes unfold across long seasons, the rapid rise of the Matan is astonishing. They are like fire, bright, quick, unpredictable, transformative. Their great burden: violence. It saddens me to write this, for I care deeply for many of the Matan I met, but their acceptance of violence troubles me more than any other aspect of their culture. To them, conflict is a tool, a means of shaping the world, sometimes even a necessity. Kingdoms rise and fall by the sword. Disputes are settled by force. Bravery is often measured by willingness to shed blood. To my people this is incomprehensible. The elves do not possess the impulse to harm other speaking beings, and thus every war, duel, and raid I encountered left a lingering ache in my heart. Worse still is the way some Matan covet elven magic. They sense its serenity, and believe it a thing to be possessed rather than understood. This desire was one reason the veil was raised 5 centuries after the fall. Our people could not survive kingdoms hungry for power in every shadow. And yet, I cannot condemn them. Violence among the Matan is born not from malice but from fear, hunger, desperation, and the swift turning of their years. Their lives pass quickly, and urgency drives them into conflict. A people of warmth and wonder. For all their flaws, for all their sad acceptance of harm, the Matan possess qualities that fill me with admiration. They are hospitable to strangers, curious about the unknown, inventive with tools and trade, courageous in danger, eager to connect, even with elves like myself. Some of my dearest friends are Matan. They welcomed me into their homes, taught me their customs, shared their meals, and tried, unsuccessfully, to teach me how to haggle. Their laughter was kind. The Matan as the heirs of the world. In truth, the Matan are now the dominant people of Neokosmos. They thrive where others falter. They rebuild where others mourn. They dream when hope seems thin. In them I see echoes of their Atlantean ancestors, ambition, resilience, ingenuity, but I also see something uniquely their own, a willingness to begin again, no matter how many times the world falls. If Atlantis was the world's golden age, then the Matan are its iron heart, strong, enduring, ever beating. Personal Notes of Maya of the Shriva Court, on Melisenda of the Ruistrian Empire. Melisenda is, perhaps, the bravest person I have ever met. Not in the way humans often speak of bravery charging into battle or standing firm in danger, but in the quiet way she continues to live despite fear seeping into the edges of every breath. She was not trained in magic. She did not seek it. She was born with fire inside her, wild, hungry, impossible to contain. A legacy of the ancient elven project, twisted and diluted through generations of Matan ancestry until it emerged in her as something raw and uncontrolled. Her body bears the marks of it. Burn scars wrap around her arms, across her side, and beneath her collarbone like pale, painful threads. She believes them hideous. I do not. To me, they resemble the bark of a fire-scarred tree that continues stubbornly to grow. She is short for a Matan, lean yet softly curved. Her black hair, so striking at first glance, is broken by large white patches left by shocks of uncontrolled magic. She hides these streaks behind shawls or hoods, as though they betray something shameful. Her eyes are soft, weary green, flickering from shadow to shadow as though expecting harm from every direction. When I first met her, she flinched when I spoke her name. On her magic, her fire is not like human sorcery, nor anything like elven evocation. It leaps from her in unpredictable storms when she is terrified or angry. I once saw her hands ignite without flame, heat shimmering as though the world itself bent around her fear. She calls herself cursed. But I know the truth. Her ancestors were touched by the same misguided experiments that sought to blend elven and human magic. The Elven project left many legacies among the Matan, but no elf ever manifested fire like this. It is something new, something uniquely human. When I began teaching her calming illusions, she watched with trembling wonder, seeing gentle magic for the first time. Her flames responded softly, curling inward rather than outward, like a frightened creature soothed by touch. To think a Matan peasant could command, however reluctantly, magic beyond anything my people could shape, it humbles me. On her hardship. Melisende lived alone for years, hiding from the Rustrian clergy who feared her magic and from neighbors who saw her as a danger. She bartered for food when she could, scavenged when she could not, and slept in barns or abandoned shrines. She told me once, with a voice small as frost, that she had not been embraced by another person since childhood. Her loneliness is a wound deeper than any burn. I wish the Matan could see that fear should lead to compassion, not exile. But they hide what frightens them. Elves, too, cannot help her fully. We must remain hidden from those who would seek our power. Still, I often wish the world were kinder to her. On our friendship. She is timid, soft-spoken, often frightened. But she tries. She apologizes constantly for things not her fault. She laughs in nervous little gasps. She will not touch a new object without asking permission. But sometimes, when she forgets to fear, she speaks passionately about wanting a home, a place to belong without hiding. I do not know if I may call her friend, but I hope so. I see such strength in her, strength of survival, gentleness, and enduring a world that has given her so little kindness. If elves ever leave the Vale again, I hope they meet more Matan like Melisende. She is proof that even fire can be tender. Personal notes of Maya of the River Court, on Freydis of the Alnama Republic. If Melisende is a flame that trembles, then Freydis is a spark that leaps. She is tall by Matan's standards, nearly my height plus half again, with a lithe, athletic form shaped by running, climbing, and, if her stories are true, several daring escapes from the balconies of merchant lords. Her skin is fair, her features sharp, her lips full and often curled into a mischievous smile that unsettles me more than I wish to admit. Her hair is cropped into a sleek black bob. Her eyes cannot be disguised. Icy blue, bright as winter stars. And when she looks at me with them, I feel she sees far more than I intend. On her profession. Freydis is a spy. She says it openly, though never clearly enough that anyone else could be sure. Her manner shifts with her company tone, posture, gestures. So fluidly it seems instinctive. In markets, she is loud and brash. In temples, she becomes soft and reverent. With me, she becomes gentle, in her own wry way. Orphaned young, she was raised by the Alnhaman Merchant Guild, trained to slip unseen, listen at doors, and steal secrets. For her, deception is as natural as breath. I had never imagined a life lived entirely in shadows. I am still unsure how she carries it so lightly. The incident of the stolen trinket, I must admit embarrassingly, that she once stole a small relic from me, a crystal sphere with quiet elven glamour, precious mostly for sentimental reasons. She later claimed she took it to test my awareness. I suspect she simply wanted to see if she could. When I realized it was gone, I panicked. My illusions scattered like frightened birds. Freydis laughed, until she became hopelessly lost in a maze of my conjuring, running into the same illusory tree 3 times before surrendering. I reclaimed the sphere. She called it an educational exchange. I was too flustered to reply. It was my first lesson in human deceit, not malicious, but effortless. And it taught me that my magic alone is not always enough to protect myself. What she taught me, Freydis, taught me to watch the world differently, to see how humans mask their intentions, how danger can wear politeness, and how safety can appear stern. She taught me to shift my posture to appear smaller or larger, use body language to blend into crowds, listen for tone changes rather than words alone, hide without illusions, using mundane shadows. She once said, "Magic is wonderful, Maya, but sometimes disappearing is just stepping where no one is looking. Among elves, hiding is weaving mist. Among humans, hiding is understanding perception. I am unsure which is more subtle." On her heart, Freydis pretends to care for nothing, but in quiet moments she wonders aloud what her life might be if she abandoned her guild. There is longing in her voice, a fragile truth from someone built of masks. For one who lies easily, her honesty strikes like arrows. She is bold, reckless, and maddeningly unpredictable. But I am grateful to her. She showed me a human cunning, not born of malice, but necessity, deception as craft, identity as art. I believe she finds me amusing, but I also believe, though she would never say it, that she is fond of me. I hope she finds a life beyond shadows some day. Chapter 4. The Peoples Wrongly Called Picts. Among all the subjects I have studied during my travels, none has weighed more heavily upon my heart than the people commonly and often carelessly called Picts. This chapter is the most difficult I have written. Not because the people themselves are hard to understand, but because the human understanding of them is so deeply flawed. The word Pict has become a net cast far too wide. It is used to name a single people, yet it ensnares dozens. It is used to justify fear, yet it blinds those who speak it. I have met many of these so-called Picts. Some were nothing alike in speech, custom, or form. Some had never even heard the word. Some were offended by it, and others embraced it out of necessity or pride, or simply because no one bothered to ask their true names. This chapter is my attempt to honor them by telling the truth as best I can. The common perception. In the courts of Ruestria, in the docks of Alnhama, in the halls of Fresnia, the word Pict is spoken with the same meaning. A barbarian from the north. Short, dark-skinned, black-haired, black-eyed, broad-shouldered, deep-chested, lean-hipped, clothed only in hides. This description, repeated endlessly across centuries, has become the standard human view of the Picts. And yet it is wrong. Deeply wrong. Dangerously wrong. It describes only one group, one tribe of the earliest migrants from Hyperborea, around 700 years after the fall. Even that tribe, as I learned from one of their descendants who guided me across the highlands, has changed greatly since those early accounts. To apply this description to everyone from the northern sea is like calling every Matan Ruestrian simply because the first merchant you met wore a red cloak. The first crossings. Historical records, Atlantean, Deutera, even early Fresnian, agree on one point around 700 AF. Multiple seafaring peoples arrived from Hyperborea. But these were not united migrations. They were tribes fleeing colder seasons behind advancing ice. Fishing clans seeking new shores. Warriors escaping clan feuds. Nomads driven by shifting northern storms. Smaller folk are remembered only in songs. The first of these were the people now called the Picts. They were indeed dark-haired, dark-eyed, and short compared to the Matan, with great strength and resilience. But they were not alone. They were merely the first. After them came others, wildly different in appearance. Tall, red-haired warriors with storm-grey eyes. Snake-cloaked mystics with eastern features. Slender fisherfolk carving spirals into driftwood. Pale nomads with blue war paint. Traders who spoke 3 tongues. Yet all of them, were called Picts by the settled kingdoms of Neokosmos. How one name became many. Humans often compress the complexities of the world for convenience, not out of malice, simply haste. To Ruestrian scribes, any northerner was a Pict. To Alnharman merchants, any hostile sailor was a Pictish pirate. To Fresnian storytellers, every northern warrior was a Pict, come to test his mettle. Thus, a single name expanded like a shadow at dusk. By the time I was born, the world had forgotten that Pict referred to only one of many Hyperborean tribes, and that even they were not what legend paints. The truth of the first Picts. What is known with certainty? They stood between 5 and 5.5 feet tall. Their skin ranged from sun-browned to olive, rarely darker. Black hair and eyes were common. Their minimal clothing reflected the climate, not savagery. Their carvings in bone and darkwood were exquisite. They did not come to conquer. They came because storms behind them worsened, and the lands ahead were open. When later tribes arrived and mingled with them, distinctions blurred. Within 3 generations they were a tapestry of faces and customs. Yet the world kept calling all of them Picts. A scholar's responsibility. I cannot force humans to abandon the term, but I can record the truth. Pict describes a moment in history, not a single people. It is a misremembered name stretched over dozens of cultures. It hides the diversity of the northern migrants. Many of these tribes deserve their true names, some of which I learned from my northern guide, whom I will speak of in my personal notes. If this chapter convinces even one scholar to choose precision over assumption, it will have been worth writing. Closing thoughts. Elves, too, are often misnamed, called fair folk, spirits, or demons, as though we have no courts, clans, or histories of our own. I understand then how a name can flatten a people into myth. The Picts and the hundreds wrongly labelled as such deserve more. They deserve to be known. They deserve to be understood. They deserve their true names. Additional peoples wrongly grouped as Picts. Across the sea are countless tribes, each with its own rights, laws, bodies, and spirits. To call all of them Picts is as inaccurate as calling every Matan a Ruestrian. The Bear tribe, Ursakir. Of all the northern peoples, none struck me with such awe or fear as the Bear tribe. They dwell in frozen lands where the cold burns deeper than fire. Life there demands strength, and strength is their measure of all things. Massive bodies, towering over most humans. Pale skin, thick blonde hair, icy blue eyes. Muscles like carved winter stone. Scars worn proudly, but never self-inflicted. Mercy is not a virtue, survival is. I often felt very small near them, yet something pure, almost childlike, lived beneath their fierce simplicity. The Shadowfang tribe, Shadunvar. These people dwell in the darkest forests, where moonlight barely reaches the ground. Their skin is dark, their eyes gleam like obsidian shards, and herbalist Tampon. When later tribes arrived and mingled with them, distinctions blurred. Within 3 generations they were a tapestry of faces and customs. Yet the world kept calling all of them Picts. A scholar's responsibility. I cannot force humans to abandon the term, but I can record the truth. Pict describes a moment in history. Not a single people's, one misnomer. To call all these tribes Picts is not merely inaccurate. It is a dismissal of their identities, histories, and humanity. A word meant for one tribe has been stretched over an entire world. I hope future scholars choose names with greater care.
Personal notes. Callan of the Boar tribe. I record these thoughts with a heaviness I do not often feel. Of all the many peoples I met during my travels, none baffled and fascinated, me quite as much as Talon, once chieftain of the Boar tribe. He was immense, in every sense of the word. Even among the Pictish raiders he dwarfed every warrior, built as though the earth itself had carved him. His chest was broad, his arms thick as tree boughs, and his long dark hair, streaked with red, gave him the appearance of a storm-given flesh. His eyes were black as coal and just as unreadable. He towered more than threefold over me, and yet he moved with a quiet confidence that was almost measured. Where I am talkative, he was silent. Where I question, he acted. Where I hesitate, he stepped forward without fear. And still, somehow, we became friends. Talon spoke little in short, practical sentences, as though words were arrows he saw no point wasting. Complex phrasing irritated him. He once growled at me for using a word he deemed too many sounds, and yet he never truly frightened me. For all his fierceness, he treated me with an unexpected gentleness, though he masked it with brusque commands. It was in his nature to give orders, and in my nature to consider and question. But we found a strange balance between us. He lived as the Picts of his homeland do, by raiding, by taking, by believing dominance to be the measure of worth. Violence to him was not cruelty, but simply life, a worldview I can understand only from a distance, as one may study storms without standing inside them. And yet I saw moments in him, small ones, but true, of kindness. He protected those he deemed unable to protect themselves, especially women and children, so long as they followed his strict customs. To him this was not mercy, but duty. Talon guided me across lands that no elf had walked in an age, teaching me how the countless tribes of the so-called Picts differed from one another. He knew the woods, the mountains, and the plains as though he felt them beneath his skin. And though he rarely explained his thoughts, he kept me safe in ways I understood only later. His tribe, the Boar tribe, was small and not well known, but respected as fighters and feared as mercenaries. They fought for any who would pay them, a custom I found baffling, but Talon spoke of it as though it were as natural as breathing. They prized strength and endurance, and Talon embodied their values as wholly as the bear embodies the mountain. But all that the Boar tribe was, all that Talon had led, ended in one night of fire and betrayal. I was absent when it happened. I still struggle with the guilt of that truth. The Fresnians attacked under darkness, leaving no survivors. Talon never spoke of his grief, and at first I thought him untouched by it. But now, looking back with clearer eyes, I see how wrong I was. Everything he did thereafter, every risk taken, every reckless charge, every quiet, brooding moment, was shaped by a hunger for vengeance deeper than any wound of the flesh. He carried his tribe's death like an unhealed scar beneath his ribs. Only later did I realize the attack had not been upon the tribe at all, but upon Talon himself. The Boar tribe had been eradicated because of him, because in him was the potential for something dangerous. A leader strong enough to unite the tribes as Khan once did, a leader who might shake kingdoms and topple empires, a leader who could have done again what the Picts did to Terra Atlantis long ago. Those who struck at him did so not from hatred but fear. I cannot condone the violence Talon embodied, nor the customs he upheld, yet I cannot deny that he was remarkable, shaped by a world harsher than any elven heart could endure. He taught me that strength takes many forms, and that friendship sometimes grows where no one expects it. I hope he finds peace, though I know he walks a path where peace rarely lives.
The Peoples of Neokosmos by Maya of the Hiva Court. Chapter 5. Epilogue. When I first set quill to page, I believed myself a careful observer standing at the edge of the world, recording what I saw with quiet clarity. I believed, in some small and foolish way, that knowledge was a thing one might gather like pressed leaves, catalogued, labelled,
and complete. I know now how little I understood. With each people I met, each story entrusted to me, each contradiction that refused to resolve cleanly, the world grew larger rather than smaller. What I once thought were borders became only thresholds. What I believed were truths became questions. I have walked among flame-touched Matan, among spies woven of lies and longing, among northerners mislabeled by history, and among my own kind, who I thought I understood best, and perhaps understand least of all. I have learned that knowledge is not a destination, but a current. One may swim with it for a time, but never reach its end. This work, then, is not a conclusion. It is only a beginning. I remain a student of this world. I suspect I always will. The elves, too, must decide what place we truly hold in the ages to come. Are we watchers only, wrapped in mist and memory? Are we guides, risking ourselves to shape gentler endings? Or are we simply one people among many, neither above nor apart? I do not yet know the answer, but I will continue to seek it. I will continue to travel, to listen, to unlearn and relearn, and to write. If these pages have taught me anything, it is this. The world is far deeper than any single life can measure. And yet, still, we must try.